Roll, please.
Showalter.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Howard.
Here.
Redland. Thompson.
Here.
Sorry.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Is there anybody signed up for public comment tonight? No public comment. Next up is a presentation for Watersworth. You know,
And I think Josh will have Dylan Green from Waterworth connected and be able to give a short little presentation on Waterworth, what they're all about.
Okay. You should be able to speak. I don't know why it's not coming in. Test. Can you hear me okay?
we can hear you.
We can?
We can't see you. I don't know if we're supposed to be able to see you, but we can at least hear you.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody jumping on. Yeah, the visuals, just because I do have a couple of visuals to take everyone through. Are we able to see? Yeah, because I do need to share my screen as well. There we are. Okay. Can we see? Can everyone see this okay?
We can see you.
Oh, see me now. Okay.
There, we got a graph on the screen now.
A graph there? Okay, perfect. All right. Well, first off, so appreciate everybody jumping on today. I know that, I want to make sure I keep it tight and efficient with all of your time. I know we do have a busy agenda for today. So I first want to give everyone a quick 5-10 minute demonstration of the Waterworth long-term financial model. And then I want to make sure that I have time to answer any questions anyone may have while I am giving that presentation. Please feel free to interrupt me if any questions pop up. Are we able to see that okay there still?
It dropped off. It has dropped off. You're no longer seeing it.
Apologies. There we go. How's that?
Still no, unfortunately.
Still no?
It's there.
Okay.
It's
There.
just on the wrong screen.
Oh, there it is. We got it drug over.
So
We got it there? Okay, perfect. All right, so yeah, first thing I do want to highlight, this is a cloud-based solution, so nothing to install or download on your end. Maybe just to give a quick, brief context. So I have had a number of meetings with City Manager Brown. In our conversations, Ken's given me great insight into the current goals and long-term priorities of Goodland and what they're facing specifically with their utilities. Again, very similar to what communities across America are dealing with when it comes to managing their utilities. There's significant capital upgrades and needs of our system, and needed to balance this while protecting our affordability of our ratepayers, which can be a very difficult task. We created Waterworth to give you that ability to financially plan, ensure we're sufficiently reinvesting into your system while balancing affordability. And so this here is the long-term financial model. So first thing I want to do highlight, this is a test data set, so don't worry about that cash position there. We do work with over 200. We actually just eclipsed 280 communities, as you can see from the drop down here. But essentially, this is the bread and butter of Waterworth. Essentially, what we're looking at here is a 10-year cash flow pro forma with 5 years of historical actuals. We can customize this timeline up to 80 years. Not that I think you need to be looking out that far, but you do have that option if you so choose. But the biggest takeaway here is the visually driven components to allow for that easy communication. What I'll do quickly is just break down and build this model back up. And this is really what the power of Waterworth is, being able to tell our financial story. So starting off with our revenue requirements. This is our operating expenses here. So again, as you can see, a few years of fiscal actuals. We've got our 2024 budget in this case, and then we have that growing with inflation over time. Any current or proposed debt service is what we would add on as well. And lastly, any capital wealth. So we have this broken up to capital improvements or versus capital expansion. Again, this is where we know that project costs are always going to be changing, costs rising. So we're always coming back and updating this table as we have firmer numbers and that kind of thing. Now that we have all our revenue requirements shown here, we've just completed the most basic form of a rate study, which would be just identifying all the revenue requirements for Dillonville here. Next, let's build up our revenue requirements, starting off with our sale of water service. As you can see, a couple different assumptions being made based on any population growth, any decline in water usage, as well as for any forecasted rate adjustments going out into the future. Any other operating revenue versus non-operating revenue. Any developer contributions, so that's our impact fees, system development charges, any new growth that's coming into the community, any borrowing that we're doing as well to potentially finance any upcoming capital, and lastly, any grants. So again, hopefully we're getting lots of these right. Waterworth does support the grant application process just by being able to visually demonstrate our system's needs and really show the impact on our ratepayers, as well as show that we have that long-term financial plan. But now that we have all our revenues identified here, we'll build that background back up and see how we're stacking up in the long run. So as you can see, going back here, now that I have that background built back up, you can see that from 2019 to 2024, our revenues are stacking up really nicely to our requirements. We're not experiencing any funding gaps. We anticipate our cash be balanced and healthy. But it looks like in this case here, it looks like we do have some new capital coming onto the books in 2025 that we haven't quite gone out and planned for. So we know what that's going to do to our cash, right? It's going to tank our cash. When I pull up that cash position punchline, it really tells that story there. We can't even isolate our cash position to really simplify this. And then we compare this to our operating threshold or any cash position targets we might have. It's very easy to have those very targeted conversations and really explain this in a very clear and transparent way. And before I move any further, any questions on how that long-term financial model builds together there?
Oh, I think we're all on board.
We're okay? Perfect. All right, so the next kind of thing I wanted to show you is how we would actually go about fixing this cash position here in Waterworth. So again, the most common way that communities have gone about this in the past is deferring this project, right? Kicking this can down the road. This is where we're actually able to see the long-term effects of this when we go into the back end of Waterworth. So this is what's producing all those visuals here. So when we go to our capital expenses, you can see it looks like this community here has a 5-year capital improvement plan. So as I mentioned, we're always coming back and updating this table as project costs come back, that kind of thing. But as you can see here, looking at that story of kicking the can down the road, when I pull up our cash position here, you can see in 2025, that's where things start dropping. So again, most common way that communities have gone about this is saying, hey, we don't want to increase rates anymore. Maybe it was a difficult year. We just did a large increase last year. Let's move one of these capital projects out. So we go down here, we see we have this $3 million looping project we're wanting to do. Now I have a 15% inflationary rate set. I know that some communities have been seeing even higher than that. We'll use 15% just as an example here. But if we move this project out with that 15% inflationary rate, even just to 2028, see this $3 million project's now a $4.5 million project, right? So this project's now increased over 50% in just the 3 years. Again, this might be where we're saying, hey, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. When we come back up to our cash position, you can see that this community is in a way more difficult financial position because this project still needs to get done. It's going to take something much more drastic come 2028. So again, this is a really easy way to understand the need to be proactive versus reactive and really push that urgency in terms of getting these projects completed. So let's look at a more proactive way of fixing this cash position. So if I move this back here to 2025, we're going to move to step 7. This is our sale of service forecasting. Obviously, the other way to fix this cash position is by increasing our revenues, right? Again, so when we move to step 7 here, you can see that there are a couple different assumptions we can make. So this is based, one is going to be a population growth, which is obviously going to be different for every community, so we can customize this based on what you're expecting. But it looks like here, again, looks like this community here is doing 2% annual increases, which is great, but obviously in this scenario, it's not quite cutting it with all that capital we have coming up. So the idea here is by doing that forecasting we see here in 2026, we can see these things are, things are starting to get tight. We're actually dipping below our operating threshold. We're going to be in some trouble here. So the idea here is if we wait till 2026, it's going to take something drastic like a 10%. That's not even going to do it in that case. It's going to take something really crazy like a 22% increase just to balance out our cash flow model, right? And these are the types of rate increases that we obviously want to try and avoid. It's rate shock on our residents. It's not politically palatable. We obviously want to do anything we can to avoid these rate increases. So the idea here is what can we do today to set us up for tomorrow? So maybe we'll propose a couple of years of 7s, maybe a 5, and then 3s going out into the future. So now we balance out our cash flow model. We're in a healthy financial position long term. Again, this is where we understand this is part math, right? Revenues, expenditures, fairly simple in that sense. But it's also part art. So again, maybe we say, you know what, we just did a large increase last year. Let's, try and, ease the burden on our ratepayers as best we can. So maybe in 2024, we look at only doing a 4%. And then in 2026, we're going to have to do that 8%, right? So again, very dynamic with its ability to look at different options and really just make sure that we have an informed decision best we can. How is that? Is everybody following along? Are there any questions or anything like that?
Oh, I think we're doing good.
Okay. I know we are just about at the end of our time there. Is that in terms of Kent? Is there anything else specifically that you were wanting me to show today, or how's that?
No, I think that gives a good initial flavor of what this software can do and the ease of giving different options that can help us make good decisions.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody taking the time to speak with me today. If any questions come up, Kent has my contact information. I'd be happy to answer any questions after this. But yeah, thank you all, and hope you have a great night.
All right. Thank you, Dylan. You too.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
I do like the way that those graphs stack and lay out. Is a good, easy visual to kind of see. I do like that.
And easy to give multiple options, not just A and B.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Bunch.
What, any idea what that service would cost us to be able to use?
It's just over 9,000 for 2 different utilities is what we had talked with them about. And it's 12,000 for 3, but we were going to work with electric and water to start with and then see how that worked out.
A one-time fee, or is that like a yearly?
There's an annual fee with that, and we can stop it at any time. So if we have it for a year, work on our immediate issues or concerns regarding, the electric fund and the water fund, and see how that's going forward. And then see if it works well for us. And then we'll see if we want to keep doing it. Don't know.
Very good. Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. We have A, the 11/4/24 commission meeting minutes, and B, appropriation ordinances 2024-22, 2024-22A, and 2024-B22. Any questions, comments, or concerns on those this week?
I move that we approve consent agenda items A and B.
A motion by Commissioner Howard,
Second.
second by Commissioner Myers. Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Howard.
Yes.
Redlin. Meyer.
Yes.
Showalter.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Okay, next up we have ordinance 1789 regarding the rezoning of 425 Center Avenue. Kent?
The Planning Commission had conducted a public hearing last time. We had the applicant, and the applicant is here as well, Brian Morales.
Welcome.
Had requested a zoning change for a property at 425 Center Avenue from R1 to downtown mixed use in order for a business he would like to open. And the Planning Commission had a public hearing. We did receive several comments by phone or by contact before the meeting, but we did not have any comments at the meeting. The Planning Commission considered all the information, and then they recommended approval of the zoning change to the City Commission. And I don't know if you want Brian Morales to come speak and say anything regarding it.
Sure. You want to come up and just kind of tell us what you got going on?
Hello, I'm Brian Morales. The purpose is we purchased that building 10 years ago. My wife was born and raised in Colby, Kansas. My whole family's in the East Coast. I was raised in Puerto Rico. But it used to be the First Baptist Church. So our passion and desire is to be able to create a coffee house. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with Clark's Crossing. They were here 5-6 years ago or so. And Jordan and Suzanne ran that, and we really like them. We're really good friends with them. And so, and essentially to continue something that they had brought to the community, a space that the community can come into and have different book reading clubs and knitting club. And, there's an altar space there in the sanctuary there. So we'd renovate that whole sanctuary space where the church was before and turn it into a coffee house and have live music and just a space for the community to come and enjoy and hang out. And we just feel like 10 years ago when we purchased it, we watched a lot of HGTV. We thought we'd renovate the whole building into a home. But since then, in the last 10 years, we've renovated the basement, so it's fully a home in the basement, but the upstairs area is just storage. And so we would really like to turn that space back into a space for the community, like it once was when it was a church. So,
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And at the end of the staff report for it, the planning commission had put forth 3 reasons why they recommended approval of it. One was an exciting new business that wants to do good things, Goodland, and that's what we're trying to promote. Second one, an additional community gathering space, just as Brian stated. And there were a couple concerns about the future use of the space as far as, because downtown mixed use obviously encompasses a lot of different uses. The planning commission made a point, said let's not stand in the way of this happening, of the progress today and the use by the current business. And that was the main things that the planning commission put forward. And then there was a bunch of additional documents included in your packet. That was also included in the planning commission's packet.
Do you have any thoughts, comments?
I'm just curious with this zoning change, was this one of the types of changes that required notification to neighbors in the area and got input
Yes.
from them?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's where we had received, I think, 4 different contacts, but none actually had a negative opinion. And, you know, again, it's 1 or 2 of them were asking, what exactly is this about? And describe it. But then once it was explained to them by Zach, the building official, they didn't have a negative opinion of the change.
Like Brian said, it's the same thing with Clark Crossing. They live in the basement, and then they ran their business on the upper level in residential.
And that one, we were reminded, was they ended up doing a zone change for that as well. Quite a few years ago,
Yeah.
but that's what happened.
I know I, for one, really like the idea, and you know, any business is good business, and to be able to encourage people to be able to do things out of their homes, you know, I think that's to an extent, I think that's a good idea too, to allow people, different types of businesses, to be able to work out of their homes.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 1789 that approves a zone change request for 425 Center Avenue from R1 to DMU.
I have a motion by Commissioner Showalter. Second by Commissioner Howard. Any further discussion?
It's just nice to see the younger generation coming back to Goodland and wanting to be involved in the community and take older buildings and make them useful and do something with them again. Thank you.
Anybody else? Roll, please.
Showalter,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Radlin, Thompson.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to ordinance 1776, amending section 19-202. Kent?
Trying to get to the end of the definition. This is an ordinance that the planning commission worked hard on.
Thank you for that.
It started out as just wanting to add the definition of accessory dwelling units and then also modifying for modular homes or manufactured homes, the definitions within that. And it became quite a bit more than that. That's why it has an earlier ordinance of 1776 when we're up around 1790 right now. So, what's included in your packet is the staff report and also the ordinance itself, which if it's approved, it actually got included with the comments on it. Obviously, that will not be there when it is the ordinance. And then staff, both Zach and I, put together the list of definitions that actually had changes in Ordinance 1776, which is 2 different pages worth. And all I did was put a brief description. If you have any additional questions, I know it's a lot of information, but we'll be happy to answer any questions. And actually, the chair of the planning commission here is here as well, could answer any questions about it if need be.
Do you have any questions or comments?
So just so I'm on the same page here, we had specific language for Airbnbs, is that correct?
We did, and I didn't bring up and it was included with bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
So the definition changed regarding bed and breakfast to include Airbnbs or whatever nomenclature, whatever the name's going to be regarding that type of business. So it was trying to address that in a general enough way that will cover it.
Good. That was going to be my question. When I went back to find it, I couldn't find it. But I wanted to make sure that we weren't specifically naming Airbnb, but more or less the type of business that Airbnb was.
Yeah, Airbnb is a company name.
Yeah.
And so kind of like everything, whatever the first one is, that becomes its name. We tried not to use that, so it would encompass everything. So it's probably a little bit hidden in there, but can't sum it up well. If you look in the bed and breakfast, it should be there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good question. Any others?
Certainly appreciate all of your guys' work on this. This obviously encompassed many meetings and took a lot of time, so thank you for that.
Definitely.
We have been working you guys hard this last year, that's for sure.
It's a little bit tedious, but I think it's pretty necessary, and hopefully it just makes for clarity in the future.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I will make a motion to approve ordinance 1776.
Second that.
Second by Commissioner Showalter. Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Myers,
Yes.
Radlin, Howard,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Okay, moving on to ordinance 1790, amending the text section of 19-501.
This is the use table, which has lots of colors.
It is very colorful.
Yes.
But what it basically does is take all the uses, have all the zones on the top, those are the columns, and then the uses is the very left column. And then it goes across the districts and states whether it's permitted, or it's a conditional use, or if there's additional considerations, which is the far right column. Other things come up that will be explained in the use standards. Again, the planning commission actually reviewed quite a few things within this use table. And kind of the default is that if there wasn't certainty regarding it, but they still wanted to allow it within a certain district, it became a conditional use. And that way they would have to go through a process to go get permission to have that use within that district, which it does take a little bit extra time. It's a little bit of extra cost, but on certain districts, you want to make sure of that. And it shouldn't be seen as a hindrance. It's just letting your neighbors know what's going on that parcel. So And then we also completed, Zach completed a lot of the information this when I reviewed it, on the changes to the use table, which include within the residential uses, 4 different things, 4 different things within the commercial uses, and then 7 uses within the public, quasi-public or recreational uses. So, a lot of times it's adding an additional district or making an additional district a conditional use instead of a permitted use, those type of things. And if you have any specific questions, we can delve deeper, but I didn't want to use your time since you're too further.
Do you have any questions on this one?
Chart definitely would make it easier for anybody that is trying to work through their projects to try to figure out what's allowed and what steps need to be taken. So I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, well, I will make a motion to approve ordinance 1790.
Second?
Second by Commissioner Myers. Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Howard,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Redland, Thompson.
Yes. And then ordinance 1791 for section 19-502.
These 3 text amendments kind of work together. We have the definitions in 202, and then you have the use table in 501, and then this is the use standards, which is referred to in the table as far as look at subsection L or look at subsection B or whatever it is. Again, one of the main things that got us started on this was the accessory dwelling units and how that fits, and then there's some specific different things, but beyond that, beyond the accessory dwelling units, then the Planning Commission took a look at all of these, which is basically a pretty long list. And I included at your chair. This is what was given to the Planning Commission as far as what was identified as changes. And what is in blue is what the actual changes were. And we can go through each one if you would like to. If not, that's okay as well. It was just an awful lot of work by the Planning Commission. And just off the first couple, I'll do the first couple to give you an idea of what this involves. Is the first one was in this use standards, they had the accessory uses, the very first one, A, and then residential accessory uses 1. And then they had C, garages, carports, and off-street parking loading areas, providing that a detached garage or carport with a maximum of 1,200 square feet and no more than 20 feet to the peak or roof of the structure. What it has in there right now is that it also had an identification of 12% of the lot. Well, we removed the 12% in this proposed ordinance. So there wouldn't have to be a math problem for the applicant as well as the building official and anybody trying to enforce that. So that's an example of one of the changes that was made. We also had, there was in this same section on residential accessory uses, they had that gardens, I don't know if it's ever been enforced, but that gardens had to meet the setbacks the same as other accessory uses. Well, I didn't know that you couldn't garden on your property to your property line. It had to be 10 foot, as an example, 10 foot rear yard setback for your garden.
Well, that's not growing corn, nobody cares.
So, those are a couple examples of what these change. A lot of this in these details is what the planning commission looked at and wanted to make amendments to. So, and Mayor, if I would ask you to ask Chairman McKenzie if you had any other comments regarding these new standards before I go any further. Giving you examples.
Have any other comments?
I would just say most of the work that we did was to try to simplify the wording. There was a lot of things that talked in circles and inconsistencies between ordinances and codes and different things. So we tried to make everything align. Tried to take a lot of the rules out of the definitions. There was rules in the definitions, and that didn't make a lot of sense. So it's just a lot of cleanup work. And like Kent said, you guys are welcome to come to go through all the fine details. But I think we got it all cleaned up for you. Also tried to clean up a lot of stuff where, just like this garden thing, jobs that would have been a lot of work for Zach to have to go enforce that just don't make any sense to enforce, or the math problem where you make an applicant go through a whole lot of hoops to get to a process that should be a lot easier. So that's what we were trying to do, is just clean up the language and the process so it's easy for people to do their projects or just be a good citizen in the city.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Then I will make a motion to approve ordinance 1791.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Showalter. Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Myers,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Redland, Showalter,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Thank you. All right, moving on to formal actions. We have for the Viking Industrial Painting, the power plant project. Okay.
Ask Neil to say something about the job that they did with Viking to make sure everything was completed.
Evening.
Evening.
Viking came and changed the ladder, the access port to get inside the tank. So for cleans and inspections, the mid rail to be KDHE compliant and OSHA compliant. They fixed they did improvements to the bases, got rid of all the old stuff that was falling apart, and I think it looks really good. They did coatings on the inside. We had to leave it drained for a little bit longer than what we figured with the changes in temperature, with the curing time and everything. But once they came back, checked it out, everything was good. They disinfected it, we filled it, waited 24 hours, opened it up, and it's been in use ever since.
Good deal.
And the roof is attached.
Oh yeah, that detail. Yeah.
That was a big detail.
Do we have any questions?
So this first section of project then alleviates any OSHA concerns, safety issues, that stuff's all taken care of now, right? Shouldn't have
Yes.
any problem with it.
Yep.
Excellent.
Everything is, the ladder is compliant now where it wasn't before, and the mid rail had to be put on. And then they moved the access point because before, when they were trying to access it, the ladder was off, and they would have to, with all the gear and stuff that they're doing, diving inspections now, it was just almost impossible for them to do it safely. So all that stuff was a safety issue, and it's all been resolved.
Yeah.
And it's in a lot better shape than it has been in a long time.
Cool, thanks.
Anybody else? So we have an invoice for the amount of $69,100 for all the tank repairs. I will make a motion to approve payment of that invoice.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Showalter. Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Showalter,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Radlin, Myers,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Okay, next up, we have an amendment to the Wollock Building Agreement. Kent?
And was notified by City Clerk Mary Volk and County Clerk Ashley Manis that the building agreement did not reflect what was happening in actuality regarding utilities. And it, County Clerk didn't want to go back regarding it. It was just, it's already been changed. They're already paying 100% of utilities, but wanted the agreement to reflect that.
Yeah.
So it's presented for your consideration.
Have any questions or concerns on this?
Make a motion to approve the amendment to the Wollock Building Agreement.
A motion by Commissioner Showalter,
Second.
second by Commissioner Myers. Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Radlin, Howard,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Okay, got a whole slew of discussion items tonight, starting with trash issues at the 24/7 travel store. Good evening.
Evening.
Yeah.
My name's Liza Marchbanks. I've been GM at the 24/7 travel store for it's my 7th year. And we started out when I got there with 2 trash containers, and we've grown immensely. One of the first things I did when I took charge of the store was put 2 more dumpsters out there. So we got the new store and we put 5 dumpsters out there. And then first holiday weekend, we needed more. So we've got 8 dumpsters, and we get them dumped every other day. And they're overflowing. It's a problem. It's not just like the trash blowing out, but it's kind of the manpower that it takes to clean it all back up. And I pride my crew. They do a really good job of making sure the facility is clean. We catch, a lot of debris from the interstate too, and keep that up too. What I think needs to happen is we need a different system. We need a trash compactor. And I think that would require a variance, I believe. I'm not sure if I'm using the right words for that. But it would be along the lines of a 30-yard container, and it would take, some construction to put it out there. But the container for the compactor would be sealed. So you wouldn't have any of the juices that flow when you get it picked up, which is considerable. And also, it's contained on the top and the sides. So none of the trash, once it's collected, will be going anywhere. And then what would happen was, I think Hills Trash Service from Sharon Springs, they service Walmart with their trash compactor. They'd come pick it up, and instead of it being an every other day thing with 8 dumpsters, it would be a once a month event. It would take it and make it would take the labor out of it, because then we just have to pick it up once. It would take some of the biohazard, for lack of a better word to say, out of the equation completely. It wouldn't be leaking out of the trash truck as it goes along. It wouldn't be all over the concrete. If you pick up trash from a truck stop, you don't ever want to pick it up twice. It's once you think you've seen it all, then you see something else and it's just completely terrible.
Yeah.
But I think that it would be a good way to handle this problem. And the company is right. So the company purchases the compactor, and then we just contract Hills Trash Service to come and pick it up, is what would happen. And I believe that The section of the property that they would put it on is over by our bio shed, and that is on the furthest. Let me get my directions right. I'm terrible. So on the north side of the property by the interstate, but it'd be away from the road and on the other side of the bio shed where we have other stuff, but it'd be away from the public. It would be away from view. You wouldn't see it unless you were coming on the interstate, really, I think.
Back, he's got a map pulled up there, but back on the northwest corner somewhere, where you're saying.
Yeah. So that little brown building at the top, yep, right there. It would go on the west side. So you wouldn't be able to see it. Right now we have dumpsters. We have a containment that's right off the building. So there's 5 dumpsters, yep, right there. And then on the far end, the west end of the property, we have all the way up into the corner. That's where 3 more dumpsters are because we didn't have any room to put them in the containment.
It is a long ways back there to have to haul your trash.
Yeah, we have carts.
Yeah.
They like to blow. But I think it would be a good solution to the problem. And I think that if you made the variance for 30 yards or more for the container, I don't think that you'd have a lot of extra variances to make. It's a really big expense to do something like that. And I think that the need definitely calls for it. And I think in order to have that, you would have to build that need. So Walmart definitely has that need. And I think with 8 dumpsters being dumped 3 times a week, we definitely have the need as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So is there actual variances that would need to happen or just a change in the contract?
We would need to amend the contract within the can. Because right now there's requirement for all residential and commercial businesses to operate through the city's franchise provider. But then it does have an exception for Walmart, which had it before that franchise agreement was agreed.
And In the Can was okay with it, if I've heard something correct.
Correct. Contacted them. They have as much difficulty as 24/7 about making sure this operates well. It doesn't operate well for In the Can as well.
It doesn't. He ends up working holidays because the holiday weekends are the busiest for us. And so he's having to hold the trash that he picks up on Monday until the dump opens so he can make the dump. So our trash is sitting in his container for over 24 hours on the holiday weekends. And it just wouldn't work if we couldn't get it picked up on Monday. It just wouldn't work. It's gotten to be, as the business grows, so does the trash.
Yeah. Well, first of all, how great is it that you're that busy?
I know, right?
Yeah.
I am super proud of the place. You know, when I stepped into it 7 years ago, I was like, oh my god. And it took, I would have to say, 3 years of really hard work to get the people in the community to notice that there was still something out on the other side of the interstate. And then for my company to say that it was worth a new build instead of a rebuild, because they were just going to rebuild that store.
Mm-hmm.
And I've retained my staff where others haven't, and I've proven to other businesses like Cadoba's, I had to prove to them for over a year that I could retain staff before they would sign an agreement. So it's been challenging, but no day is ever the same.
I mean, it definitely sounds like there is a real need for this, and if you guys are willing to take on the cost of installing it and then dealing with your own contract. I mean, I personally don't see an issue with approaching In the Can to see if they have an issue with amending the contract for this for you guys. But
Agreed.
The staff can look into it as long as that's the commission's direction and bring back a proposed agreement for you to consider.
okay, Sounds
you.
good. Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Fort Hays Northwest Tech Grant Award. Kent?
The benchers had made a presentation earlier to the commission and had asked about the setting up a lot that the city had received or had a lot donated to it as a possibility for their construction department program, and that they were going to make an application for a grant award, a pretty significant grant award, through the Patterson Family Foundation, I believe it was. And they did get notification that they had received up to $600,000 in funds for not just the initial bill, but for the program itself. Actually, Commissioner Showalter might know more about that part of it than I do, but so Ben asked immediately after he was notified of the award, can we move forward? So I don't know if, before I say anything further, Commissioner Showalter, you have anything else to provide?
I think the college was looking for a MOU commitment for that property so that the program could move forward as quickly as they could. One of the hopes was that they could start putting down a foundation before it got too cold for them to be able to do it. So that way the current students in the program would be able to have a part in all phases of the building process. So we didn't have students that were coming in and missing out on some of those things. So the plan right now is for the program to be self-funded, where each house could then be sold, the money put back into the pool, and then allow them to build another house. And it just kind of gets bigger and bigger. So we'll start off with kind of a smaller home this time, and then start to expand on what they can do, and eventually have 3 houses built, and hopefully continue building into perpetuity. So
The the commission did approve an MOU to hold the property. Now it's more a matter of how the city transfers the property to Northwest Tech ownership for this process. And if you'd like staff to get something, papers to that effect put together.
Yeah, well, I think we kind of, we did the MOU with the intention of, in the hope that the college would receive their funding, and if they did, we would allow them to move forward with the project. So at this point, there is absolutely no reason I see to prevent them from doing so. So yeah, I'm in favor of moving forward with signing over the property to them so they can get going on their project.
Yeah.
Jake, do we need anything else at this point as far as authority?
Yeah.
Not too far away, I can't throw something.
This is pretty heavy.
Right.
Okay, yeah, let's get moving on that so they can get started.
Yes.
Okay, next up we have beer garden and regulations for future events and questions regarding that. And I believe Justin Stacer is the one who wanted that on the agenda, so we're going to give him a call and see if he answers.
He just had knee surgery last week, so he's not very mobile yet.
Hello?
Yes, is Justin in?
Yes, just a minute, please.
Thank you.
It's Justin.
Hey, Justin, this is Mayor Thompson. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, sir?
Good. Just giving you a call. You wanted to have beer garden regulations on our agenda this evening, so we just wanted to see what was tonight.
Well, first I'd like to apologize for not being there. I had a new knee replacement here on this last Tuesday, so unfortunately I wasn't able to make it. But we had a beer garden down there on Flatlanders, and it was a pretty good success. I did have a lot of people walk by and actually ask me if they could take it and walk down the street where food was and stuff like that. And of course, the response was no. We have to stay within the
the approved area.
Yeah. Well, I got to thinking about that a lot. Well, let's talk with city manager, because I've been to several big events like Barrett Jackson and Oktoberfest, and there's not really a caged or fenced area for a beer garden on those large events like that. It's pretty much where the lines of the event are, and then you could go within any spot in that area type of a deal. And I didn't know what you guys' thoughts were if we did a couple blocks, because obviously in goal for me would make it easier on us for that way would be able to have the entire barricaded area of Flatlanders. Now I know that I talked with Chief Earhart, and he said he didn't really have the manpower to police an area that big. But what if we started out with like a 2-block radius type of a deal where you could actually go to Traditions and get your beer, go over there to the Smoke Shack or the Diesel burger place was open right there down the road for us too. So it was, and I had several people actually go get the food and then come into the beer garden and actually sit at the table and eat. But there were some people that didn't want to actually go in the beer garden, not because they didn't want a beer, but because they didn't want to take their family and actually sit in a caged area in the beer garden. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So I didn't know what your guys' thoughts were if we could expand that area so it's more than just a 20 by 40 spot that you have to stay in. I ended up chasing one person down that left the area, but all in all, it wasn't the fact that he just wanted to walk with his family is what he wanted, and unfortunately he wanted a beer and didn't want to stay until he drank the whole thing. So, but I just was throwing it out there to see what we could initiate, or at least start the process of even looking at it to see if that would be feasible for something for us to do in Sherwood County.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up. I mean, I guess my first thought is, and I don't know all the regulations that we have in place regarding beer gardens off the top of my head, but when you apply for that, do you kind of have to fill out the spot in which you're wanting to have the beer garden currently?
Yeah, so we have to draw a map of where the beer garden would be, type of a deal. So for me, it was 11th and Main, and I had a 20 by 40 fenced area is what I had for that beer garden. So I don't have to do that if I'm selling just malt beverage to the ABC person, but I do have to go to the city and get a permit from the city to sell it at that location.
And I'm assuming our regulation, I'm talking to Ken here, say that when you do that, you kind of have to have that area blocked off, so it's very specific as to where that area is.
Has to be identified. You have to have some sort of.
So you're kind of looking into basically a little more leniency in that, where maybe it doesn't have to be quite so specific as to what's barricaded off, but maybe more kind of a general, like from
if you're
from
on
9th Street to 11th Street on Main Street kind of a deal, but not have to have fence all along the area kind of a thing, yeah?
Yeah. And there's certain things like we provided wristbands. We had one of the, I think it was Budweiser that gave us the wristbands. So we actually went and carded the people and did that, because that's still my my responsibility as the person that sells it. I still have to card them, make sure that they're all good, and once they are, then I gave them a wristband so they wouldn't have to go out and actually be carded again. But that is something that could also help the police department as well, because if they see somebody walking down the deal with a beer, they need to have a wristband on it. If they don't have a wristband on, then they didn't get it from a beer garden type of a thing that we have down there. But yes, there needs to be a signage that said end of beer garden or something like that, stay within the barricades, something on that nature. And then that could be some education also that you had at the beer garden itself, that, hey, you got 2 city blocks here, make sure you stay in between.
Yeah. We else have any questions? For Justin?
I mean, I've always has been interested in that concept. I've never thought about it just being a couple blocks, which makes it a little bit easier, because when I had my place, so we had the same problem. I had the little gated out front area, and that was it. And I had many people that I had to stop before they would leave with their beer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge on both parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be something worth looking into at least to see if there is any way we can maybe adjust things to make it a little easier to have a beer garden without being quite so closed off. But
sure,
that's my thoughts. I don't know how everybody else feels about it. But
sure.
There is also, the aspect of, the larger area you get, the harder it is to properly enforce, and you have to have the manpower to do so to an extent.
Absolutely. And that's why, that's why I went to talk to Chief Earhart, because I knew that, he has limited staff, and that's a pretty big area for a limited staff to cover. I mean, we type the same thing with EMS when I'm on EMS down there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I understand exactly what's going on, but I think if you could combine, like, food and beer garden all in, like, that 2-block radius, that's going to hit a lot of stuff for me.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, I think it needs to be in with all the food court type deal, all at one area.
Yeah, the guy that came down from Kirk, Colorado, he smokes a bunch of meat. He has the wagon type of a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
He came up to me afterwards and he goes, I'm going to request sitting by you the whole time, because I sold way more barbecue because they came through the barbecue line, and then I let him sit at the beer garden table.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so. That's a good combo.
Yeah.
So it went that day for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's something we need to look at. See if, talk to Jason and everything else, and just get some possibilities worked out.
Okay. Well, it sounds like it's something that the commission will consider and take a look at. So.
I appreciate you guys considering.
All right. Anything else from you, Justin?
No, sir. That's all I have.
Okay. Well, thank you and have a good evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Anybody have anything else on that you wish to say? No. I think we hit it pretty well. Okay, moving on. We have for the KMEA, the Mineska Solar Flats Project.
Minska.
Minska?
It's the Minneska River flows next to this area, so that's why it's called the Minneska Flat Solar. And I'll ask for assistance from Director of Public Power, Justin Bedore. But KMEA came and is starting to work on a large scale solar project in Pratt County. About down towards the south part of the state. It'll be a 200 megawatt project, but they have up to 90 megawatts it's available for, or that is for KMEA itself. And in your packet is a short PowerPoint that shows some of the different entities. Right now, our power's through Sunflower, And we get all of our power through Sunflower, or we operate our own power plant. Those are the two items. We have a very small, it's called WAPA, but it's Western Area Power Administration, which is actually hydropower. And we get a small, it's under 1 megawatt. The pricing is what's important with these different little segments of power. This is a new project. It will not be online until the beginning of 2027. So that would be after the conclusion of our current contract with Sunflower. It would offer a project of about 30 years and then a couple of small extensions. But then that has basically a ceiling price that this could come into play and have a set price that is set as a ceiling rather than not for all of our power needs. It's just for a small segment of it. A number of communities, and Dustin always likes to mention City of Russell. There's several other communities that do the same type of thing. They end up participating in these different large-scale projects and ending up with a little portion. That's kind of how we ended up with the WAPA portion, is that was offered to a number of communities across Kansas. We took a little bit of it. Goodland has not participated in any other large-scale projects, especially since we have Sunflower. That's not the way they operate as far as how they do. And it's not really how the electricity market has changed over the last decade or two. It has become much more complicated. And as far as as we found out with the February 21 event, where the pricing for electric power just went through the roof. And we ended up with that over $1,800,000 bill that we ended up having to pay, and we've just finished paying off. So over the last couple of years, both Dustin and I, and he serves on the board of the KMEA. He's seen a couple different projects being discussed with KMEA, looking for opportunities that would be helpful to the community. And Dustin is really pointed forward to this one, as well as the KMEA officials, to being a good possibility for Goodland, and want to bring it to your consideration. What we'd like to do is have KMEA make a more formal presentation about what it would actually, what's the agreement and some of the details. They did send us a sample agreement, but I didn't want to send that to you and make the packet over 200 pages. But we're just going to start on the next one to make it over 100 pages. So, but there are some caveats with it, obviously, but I think it's, and it's a kind of a range as far as what to consider about how much power. It could be as little as 1 megawatt. Dustin has really made a point of saying 2 megawatts might be the best option for us right now, because this may not be the only large-scale project that comes along. Plus, we have our renewal, but it would not affect our renewal since it starts delivering power at in 2027. That's after the current contract. And part of the electric market, it's not that the power that's generated here in Pratt, in this Minnesota Flats area, reaches Goodland. That's not how it works. It's that power is produced there, it's put into the grid. We end up with power, other power here. But the math problem for all the people following the electric market says it equals what Goodland uses versus what's put into the grid over at this point. So that's part of it. So, and I'll ask Dustin if he has any other comments. I probably said too much. But.
No, I don't really have any other comments. I think you touched on about everything. with our current contract and being 15 years, it's really kind of put us into a spot where we can't look at anything. This was interesting because it happens after our current contract. So it really doesn't tie us to KMEA except for that. So if Sunflower comes in later and with a great deal, we could still go with Sunflower, but we could have this solar for the next 30 years at this market rate of whatever they were going to provide it at. And if you kind of look at the market and the rates, 30 years, it's a pretty good fee for us. So Kent did mention the WAPA. You know, there's days where our load is 4.5 to 5 megawatts, 5.5 megawatts. So I don't want to get too high with that solar to where we're paying for solar and we're not using that energy. So that's the reason we're kind of like looking at 2 megawatts somewhere in there. I think originally they came at us with 3, but it's a good opportunity. I know there's other communities that have already signed agreements, and it's a good spot for us to kind of diversify. So not just everything's in one bucket. So it hasn't been good for us for 15 years or 13 years, but
The reason we're bringing this to your attention now is that there's a little bit of urgency in that by the end of this year, they need to know whether Goodland would want to be a participant or not. So that's why they've said in their schedule that they could come at the next meeting on December 2nd and provide more additional information to you, go over the actual agreement, and that would allow also, don't have to approve the agreement then, you could take whatever information and consider it, come back at the next, we still have one more meeting before the end of the year to be able to approve the agreement. So, and I mentioned other cities, there's a number of other cities will have, you know, City of Russell has 5 or 6 different sets of power that they use. And it doesn't mean that it has to be used every single day. I think they'll make a point of that. It's basically the electric market anymore is a day ahead, or is what's your next day's power and what sources of power are you using. And that's how it's traded as far as the cost. So there's going to be times when this will be favorable, and there'll be times where it's not favorable. But that doesn't mean you have to use it. So, but they'll go through a lot of those different scenarios. Not a lot, but enough so that you can understand why this is seen as a favorable tool to a lot of different entities.
Oh, I think nothing. I told Kent this the other day, you know, when KMA had come and kind of did a presentation about a year ago and kind of talked a little bit about diversifying your energy in different areas. I thought at that point in time that seemed like a pretty good idea and a good thing to really look at and consider moving forward, especially moving into our next contract. So, I mean, I think having them come in and kind of flesh this out a little more for us would be a great idea, personally. Yeah, for sure.
Let's hear what they have to say.
Yeah. Okay, so bring them in.
Okay, we'll bring them in.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, next up, discussion about Ordinance 1792, creating a land bank, Board of Trustees, power, budget, etc.
Talked about this. Actually, it had been one of the recommendations from the housing assessment that was done in 2021, and had looked at it pretty seriously over at the end of last year and into the beginning of this year. Staff did have a little hesitation. The city manager had a little hesitation to try to create this board, which would include a board of trustees for land bank. It's basically a tool that gets non-productive properties into a productive area. If it's the current owner wants that to happen. But what my little hang up regarding it was, one, we hadn't done communication with the other taxing entities, that's a possibility. Because the land bank in state statute, which I included the Attorney General's opinion, says that the back taxes for a property are basically wiped away if it's donated to a land bank. And then the current taxes are held in abeyance until it's sold to an entity that actually is going to do something with the property. While it's held by the land bank, it's as if it's owned by the city or the county. But with that Attorney General's opinion, there's a little bit more comfort from staff that this has the authority for this to happen. But that's still left as far as the communication with the other entities. Did have an opportunity to talk with a representative of the county and of the school district that could come to their meetings, make a little bit of presentation on the land bank ordinance and what its purpose and what its role is what they have. I included the proposed ordinance, which is basically just copied from another communities. And there's over 40 communities now across the state of Kansas that are using land banks. And it's the same type of thing. You have a property that is not either being taken care of, or it's ended up in the next generation that the children or the grandchildren now own the property, or just like the property we had 2 or 3 meetings ago, well, a couple months ago, to tear down the shed, was owned by 17 different people.
Yeah.
You know, they're never going to be able to sell that property, but if they could donate it to a land bank, that would be a way to kind of be a conduit to move it, so then it could be sold to someone would actually do something with the property. And so that's the goal with most of this. Some communities don't use it very often. Some communities use it a lot. City of Pittsburgh, which both staff and with SCCD, Sherman County Community Development, we, after the housing assessment, talked with officials with the City of Pittsburgh and had good conversations with the coordinator of the land bank, and they have over 100 properties, probably 150 to 200 properties that go in and out of the land bank at various times. So, and the goal is not for the city to own property. The goal is to, and it's not the city, it's this land bank. It's to move it. Get it to someone who will actually do something productive with the property. And so that's the purpose of the ordinance. And it was recommended. And it basically works for the properties on the lower quality homes, or the homes that have not been taken care of, or are vacant or unoccupied, those type of properties. So that's the goal and the purpose, and I don't know if it brought up any other questions for the commissioners at this point.
So the way the proposed ordinance would be written would be so that if somebody had a property that, you know, owned or owed several years worth of property taxes and they couldn't take care of that, if they donated that to the land bank, then that would relieve them the responsibility of paying those taxes, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that's in that Attorney General's opinion?
Yes. That's kind of the incentive for the property owner to actually make that case. Now, they don't benefit from the sale of the property. It's owned by the land bank. So that's what they have to weigh. You know, Because some people hang on to properties thinking, well, I'll sell it in the future. Or it's an asset. I just want to hang on to it. But I'm not going to pay taxes. Or like the county clerk mentioned is that they'll be back, have 2 years, and then the third year they'll pay 1 year's worth of taxes. So they're still at that 2 years and can't go to a tax sale just yet. And they'll just stay 1 year ahead of selling the property, or when it has to be forced to sell the property. So there's those type of games too you're trying to avoid. Or avoid as many. It doesn't mean that every situation is going to end up good. But
Well, I'm certainly in favor of it. I think it's an opportunity for us to allow people another alternative to try to take care of back taxes, but also to try to drive economic development within our communities. So I think it's a good idea. I'm certainly in favor of it.
Is the board consisting of certain types of people, like business owners or just individuals who come in and apply to be on the board? That's something
that maybe what you guys would like to decide. I've seen that in other communities. Some set it up with specific identified.
Okay.
And some do not, but they end up with that, you know, they want a banker on there, they want a person representing the other taxing subdivisions, a business owner, or those type of things. It just depends.
I think it's interesting.
Yep. I think the land bank thing is a good tool for Goodland to use and the patrons if they want to help the community grow.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a reason that we couldn't, instead of having a board of trustees, just assign that power to the Sherman County Community Foundation? Because it seems to me that their board is kind of a swath of the same type of people that we would want to make those decisions in the first place. Or does it have to be a specific set of board of trustees that are separate from that?
I think it needs to be identified separately. Doesn't mean that it has to be different people. Because I've seen that happen with public building commissions. In fact, I think a lot of times it'll be the same city council board also serves as a public building commission, but you have to identify the meetings separately, those type of things. Now, I don't have an exact answer whether they could be a foundation board or something else. We'll have to look into that.
I think I said foundation, but I think that's Sherman County Community Development, SCCD.
Yeah, either one. I don't know. Don't have an exact answer.
In those types of situations, it's not unusual to have like the director or whatever as the community development director as a member of that. And the same thing, any other community member, depending on what criteria you put in there, could fill that role. It does seem like, as Kent said, a lot of times the same people fill those roles. However, I would caution you of saying, okay, the land bank will consist of the same board as the Sherman County Community Development. Well, then you have a vacancy, so you have two vacancies. You know, it's so there's a little bit of logistics there. I think it would be appropriate if you make it to where the director is one of the members of your board of trustees. But I don't know if it has to be as exclusive as that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it sounds like the commission at least wants to kind of delve into it further and try to flesh it out to see if it's something that you can get to an agreement on.
Yes.
And it's okay to go present to the school board and to the county commission.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. We'll do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then last thing under discussion items is follow up on the USD 352 plans for the Career Tech building.
That's for you guys, I know.
Okay. I mean, my thoughts on it are, I really like the presentation. I like the idea that they're wanting to build a building to kind of house some of the less traditional programs to give students a more solid place to have those outlets for those different kind of STEM programs and stuff. You know, as far as sales tax go, I mean, I think that's a decision that should be made by the community, and we shouldn't stand in the way of them making a proposal to put that out there. But
The one thing I mentioned last meeting when Bill Bierman was here was to have, if possible, have a presentation, the same type of presentation to the planning commission as well, since he was talking about traffic patterns at the high school. Right. Is that all right to go ahead and have them present to the planning commission?
I believe so.
Sure. Yes.
I would say that after that presentation, I did receive one piece of negative feedback about the traffic patterns. I was somewhat surprised that there were at least, one resident in that area that was not in favor of a one-way. So that might be something, that I told them that I would pass along. So
I will say, as one of many people who live in that area who drive both directions on that street multiple times on a daily basis, initially it sounded like maybe a little bit inconvenient, but at the same time we were also just one block further from Caldwell, which is a through street. So it's just be a matter of just changing your routines and finding a different one.
Initially, when they brought it up, it made sense. I mean, to have a street like that was going to have a lot of cross traffic of high school students, that it made sense to me. But just so we know, there are some people out there that aren't necessarily in favor of it. So.
Good.
Well, and I think there's 2 residents on that block, or 2 houses. One's owned by the school, but the other one's
and
not.
2 others.
It's privately owned.
Okay. Anything else on that?
Nope.
Okay, let's move on to reports then, starting with our city manager, Kent.
Included in your packet is the manager memo as well as the police monthly activity report for October. Did want to let you know that the 1526 Caldwell Street is, did get a report today that they were going to finish the basement removal and be done with the property by this evening.
Nice.
So, were they cleaning up it?
Yep. It was level and everything.
Nice.
So, that is done. We do have, that is one property, mentioned land bank, but it's owned by a person that is deceased, unfortunately. So, but it is heading for tax sale. The next generations have not seen fit to pay anything on the property. However, the demolition, we have not received the invoice as yet, so that will not be included on the tax sale. But we did have communication with the county attorney to let any prospective people interested in the property that there's a bill that's forthcoming on the property that they, if they bought the property, they would be responsible for it, of $9,000 and that amount.
Yeah.
Whatever that amount, 9,000 and change for the property. So, just want to let you know that. If you happen to see it in the paper, it is listed for a tax sale. The Northwest Tech has, or 40s Northwest Tech has their CSI pro. Please let Police Chief Earhart explain further what the request was from a representative of Northwest Tech.
Hi.
Oh, evening.
So we were in our community advisory board meeting with Leah, the CSI instructor, and she has all the equipment and stuff. I believe she has most of the equipment for a lab. And she doesn't have any place to put that. It requires water and some other things. and there's not enough room at the college. I went home that night and just thought about it, and so we have the 2 kitchens out of the armory. I know everybody's been out there to kind of go through there. So I called her back and asked her if she'd be interested in putting the lab out there. This lab would cover basically fingerprinting and fingerprint processing, trace evidence experiments, and blood experiments and demonstrations. So I just asked her if we do not use that space whatsoever, except for the junk that's just kind of sitting around in it. So we just, she came out and looked at it, and she was really pumped about it because we have the water, we have the space, there's floor drains. And then we have a back room to that kitchen as well that she could also use for some blood splatter stuff, I believe is what she was wanting. We would need to do, of course, an MOU, and they would be required, or it would be their responsibility to any modifications or things like that that would be on them to do. That area is not heated. I did tell her that. She said that shouldn't be a problem. That's about one of the only areas that's not heated in the whole building. But I guess, and the best part of it, well, not the best part of it, but a good part of it is the officers would also be able to use this lab for fingerprint processing and things like that. So we obviously won't be mixing chemicals together like she would, but for our needs of it, it'd be pretty neat to have a lab, that we can utilize to help solve crimes within the city.
Is there, so this would be something that they would bring the students out to use. I see a lot of
Yes.
on a regular basis.
I don't know how regular that. Maybe that's something Jason knows. I don't know how regular they would use that.
I just didn't know is there access to there without having to go through the entire police station?
Yes. So the east door is sitting right there. I just had a brief conversation with Josh, and he can give some control access for that door that only the teacher would have access to, and then an additional control access. There's a door before you get into the gym. There's another door right there, so they wouldn't have access past that door. If they did have access, we would just give it to the teacher, and she would have to escort them to the bathrooms, which are literally right there. If they need to use the restroom or something like that, and there's a drinking fountain right there. And yeah, so the access part, we would basically lock that down to where they couldn't get inside wandering by themselves. That would be locked down. But that kitchen's something that I don't foresee us ever using, just for storage. And I have plenty of storage that I can move what's in there now other places.
Yeah. That sounds like it's something that could be kind of a win-win for college and PD. So I think it's something worth looking into.
Yeah, and I did speak with Ben Shears. Actually, I spoke with Jason to see if Ben knew about it, and Ben just called me a little bit ago, and he did know about it, and he was also he's excited about it as well. So I guess tonight's presentation is just more of a, can we go forward with the beginning and MOU with them on this?
Yeah, we'll bring it back for your approval.
Sounds like.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. While you're up there real quick, I got a question for you. First of all, I want to say I do always appreciate these reports that you give us. Very thorough and give us a lot of information. There's one thing in particular I wanted to ask you about under your additional reports.
Okay.
Specifically number 1, and I quote, "The Chiefs are still undefeated." That is my first notation, smiley face. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that, Susan.
Yeah, so we have a lot of players that are hurt. And we're still the best in the league at this point. So it really doesn't matter. I could go on and on, but I won't. Because I just got told sit down, I think, by somebody. I'm not sure.
Thanks, Jason.
All right.
The industrial park project, they have started on the sewer line on the north side of the project, they're actually in the Nutrien, where the two big tanks for Nutrien are. They're just to the south of that. They've made some headway, and that is a deep line.
But not as deep as the other.
And they're getting going on it. So see how it goes. The water department also completed quite a bit. They just really just have the corner to connect a north and south line and an east and west line, and they're at the southwest corner of the park, and they have a fire hydrant to put in at that location. And they connect it all, but they'll get that done this week, I'm sure. So that's where we are on the industrial park. As the project's being completed, we are receiving inquiries, but it's I don't know if we're ready to make any. It's basically an inquiry from the person who ended up purchasing a lot from us earlier this year for additional property. But I don't think we're quite ready. We're not done with the project as yet. But just let you know that there is an inquiry for. We'll eventually have consideration for that. And two more things. I'll before I talk about the city-owned property annexation. Andrew with EBH had some follow-up information regarding the East Street project. I don't know if you wanted to mention it.
Sure. So going back through all my reference manuals, design guides, things of that sort, of kept drawing me back to 36 feet, of course. After talking with Kenton and with Kent, the concern is the snow, right? And the rick in the middle. Then maybe that's not your primary concern, but that was something that was brought up. We thought 4 feet additional was kind of a happy medium. So that'd be a 40-foot wide roadway. Plus, then if we got an even bigger snow, people could still, if there was a car parked there shouldn't be on a snow route, but if there was, that would still give like a 10-foot driving path in there. So it actually opened it up to where that rick could be 8 feet wide or so. So didn't know if you guys had any additional thoughts, or if you're still going back to maybe the original width.
The size of the streets now is what?
46 west of Kansas, 50 east of Kansas.
So there still would be room with a 40-foot street surface right away to have sidewalks on the outside of that within the current framework.
Right.
Yeah.
Without impacting people's properties.
I guess it doesn't really matter to me as long as the project can still move forward kind of in the original, what we had thought of with the sidewalks. I don't know that I'm going to argue over 4 feet. So
Yeah.
great idea. It's easier to move snow. I think how can we argue against that? So.
Yeah.
Andrew will have to finish up designs on it and then come back and show you a more finalized version of regarding plans before we'd be able to move ahead. But that's what we're trying to get figured out right now, what to put as, okay, this is final. Are you okay with it? And then be able to take the next steps on the project.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
And then it's come up in a couple discussions, but I think there's, and if Josh wants to put it up on the screen, the city-owned property that's just west of Topside Manor. It's a parcel of 30-some acres. It actually holds the ponds for the water treatment, but most of it is vacant at this point. But since it is city-owned property, the city could annex it, and it really would be a good idea to get it annexed. And for one, start the transfer of service property from this Midwest Energy to city property. But also, if there's a project that comes about, we at least get that part done as far as the annexation taken care of. And is it okay for staff to develop an ordinance that would accomplish that?
So which all
That's good.
of that is city property?
Basically, if you extended the red line, this red line, it's this parcel, that's the south edge of it. Wheat Ridge owns this part, or the assisted living down here, or the senior housing.
Mm-hmm.
They own that part. So from every part of, from the green to the north to where it says West First Street, and it's tan.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. That's the city's part, city owned.
So if we were to try to annex that section in, would it not also make sense to just also annex in that section of Wheat Ridge?
Yes. It would be helpful to get Wheat Ridge to, if I could find the appropriate person, which is difficult, seems like, to sign to say, yes, please do it. But the city would actually have authority to do it because it's already on three sides and then it would be encircled.
Yes.
Right. But wouldn't we be smart to just go over to basically the highway and annex that all square in?
It would, although you cannot annex over a certain amount of acreage, and I think that parcel to the west is too large. Without their,
Right.
if they would agree to it, yes. If they don't, then no, we couldn't do it. Without other.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to definitely do the city-owned lots and Wheat Ridge for sure. And, if it might be worth reaching out to the other property owner to see what their thoughts are, especially if, we have land plotted out for residential growth right there, put it up against it. If that were to ever get filled up, it would make sense that it would probably continue on that way. So that would be my thoughts, is try to move forward with the city and Wheat Ridge, and maybe even possibly that other property if the owner is willing.
Okay. And that's all I have, sir.
Okay. Do we have any questions for our city manager this evening?
Nope.
Thank you, Ken. Move on to commissioner reports, starting on my left with Commissioner Howard.
Nothing yet this time.
I have Commissioner Myers.
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Showalter.
Nothing to report.
And for the mayor's report, I have nothing to add as well. We do have an executive session on here this evening, but I don't think we're going to go into that tonight. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion by Commissioner Showalter, second by Commissioner Myers. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.